مساء الفل كل اللي بيتفرجوا علينا أو بيسمعونا في حلقة جديدة من Giving Back. Today's episode is in English, coming from Dubai, and today we're with film director Bruce Macdonald. How are you, Bruce?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I love the name, Giving Back.
It makes me very happy because, we're trying as much as possible for the giving back, not just to be the name of a podcast, but it's a value, it's a call to action for everybody that is listening and is part of giving back as a guest or anything, to just have that as a call to action for something to do. So thank you so much for saying that.
Pleasure. Now, I watched a couple of your previous episodes, and I think that it's really, really valuable, worth doing. And, I'm very happy to be on this because I think you're setting forth something that I think could be very successful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having you today and your time. I know you're very, very busy, always hustling with all the work. But, I'm very happy that we're here.
Stoked.
And,
pleasure.
As we were talking before actually filming the episode, this episode is exciting because you come with experience more than everyone that we featured so far. So far, the age range.
Did you say I'm the oldest person?
You're the wisest person that we have on Giving Back so far. Everybody that we featured so far has been around my age, a few years, older. I'm 33 at the moment, but I think the oldest that we featured so far was around 40. But
gee, that's old, hey?
That's the oldest.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the oldest that we feature. But what's exciting with you is a lot of people just in different fields, when they're approaching, a specific age, they're thinking about retiring. But with our field, it's you keep on doing it as long as, you feel that you have the energy and
Absolutely.
that fire. And, speaking to Jono and speaking to people that actually know you, they say that you are one of the hardest working people that they ever met. And you lead by example because, at their age, they feel that they're tired doing specific tasks while they see you doing so much more work than the ones that they usually do. So I'd love to...
They say, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
They say if you do what you love, you do it well. And you have longevity in it. Look at Clint Eastwood, directing movies at 91 years old, a phenomenon. So I think there's no cap on age. And, if you look at history and characters, sometimes the longer your journey, the more interesting your story and the more easily it is to tell other people's stories, perhaps. Because you have, I guess we can use that word wisdom, or we hope it's wisdom.
It is wisdom, 100%. So I'd love to start from the beginning. We'd love to know how you got involved with this field and this industry. And leading to today. And you've witnessed, a lot of things with technology and how it's advancing, and learned to work with all that, differences in the craft. So if you just, take us on from the start, that would be great.
Okay. In South Africa, where I originate from, they had a thing called conscription, where all young men at the age of 18 had to go and do national service. Our country was perpetually at war, so they made soldiers out of young men. And I was fortunate. I was a fairly good surfer at the time, so they sent me to the Navy. And I did my basic training, which is from hell. They get you up at 3 a.m, you make your bed like a plank. You go through what you see in the movies, literally sit, stand, jump, whatever. But after basic training, I got sent to, by some miracle, TAPC, Training Aids Production Center, which was the Navy's video unit. And just a sidebar, I was with some of the most respected filmmakers today. Craig Foster, who made my octopus teacher. He and I were colleagues both in the Navy at the time. He's gone on to win an Oscar for Best Documentary last year. We're really good friends. I was his best man at his wedding. So surrounded by amazing talent. And really our role was to make propaganda films about the Army, the Navy, and put out messaging that they wanted to do. But collectively, we all fell in love with film. And that was Craig as well. He knew nothing about film. And look where he's got to. They sent me to a technical college where I learned the art of filmmaking. And by the time I was ready to leave the Navy, I thought, my word, I know everything. I'm a director, I'm a DOP, I'm the king of the world. And I'm going to walk into the workplace and I'm going to be a director. That didn't happen. It took me a long time to find a job. And eventually when I did find a job, my start-off position was a slave. I worked for a guy called James Mitchell, who's passed away now. He was ABC News's top cameraman for Africa, telling hard stories of, the genocide in Rwanda, much of South Africa's tale of Nelson Mandela and rights, and he lived a very dangerous life. Anyway, my job was, and tell me if I'm talking too much.
No.
But my job for him, I was his cable basher, literally. So I would carry the cameras, I'd carry the lights. I wasn't allowed to look through the eyepiece, not even through the eyepiece. I was not allowed to touch the camera. And my job at the end of the day was to clean the lenses, pack away the lights, roll up cables. I can roll cables really well to this day. And
was that discipline or that was just how the industry was in South Africa at the time?
I think that was like an apprenticeship, really. I think that old school filmmakers was a very disciplined craft, really. I mean, because you're going to work with film, where it's not like the digital world today where you just press roll and you can roll and roll and roll. It was a roll of film, a 400-foot roll is, 6 minutes. And it's expensive, so you don't shoot 100 takes. You need to really know that it's loaded properly, that it's exposed properly, so your DOPs can't look at a monitor and adjust the aperture or the f-stop. So there was a real skill involved. So James taught me all of this. And, your audience may find it amusing, but one day he said to me, we had a casting in the studio, and he said to me, Bruce, you can shoot the casting.
Okay. That was a big...
I was like, geez, a breakthrough. I'm getting behind the camera, and I got to light the studio and light all these people coming in that auditioned for the various roles. And that was my breakthrough moment with him.
Awesome.
But it took 2 years of being a slave.
Okay.
I would go back to my wife at the end of a workday and say, I'm sure I'm more intelligent than this. I don't want to carry on with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing. And this program of yours is about giving back. And I was surrounded by people who were supportive and encouraging, and through the encouragement, I persevered. It's very easy to give up when it gets tough and when you don't enjoy what you're doing, and you feel you have a higher value than what you're doing. So I learned a lot of lessons in humility. And I think the biggest thing that any filmmaker, any young filmmaker, any old filmmaker needs to know, that to succeed in this business, if you had to sum it up with one word, it has to be perseverance. You have to persevere with your dream.
Mm-hmm.
And there are going to be many stumbling blocks along the way.
Of course. I mean, thank you for sharing that, because it's also very I would say, educating to know that even in the past, when the industry was not as competitive as it is today, and there's a clutter of people that want to do the same thing, it was still challenging, and you still had to make your way to be able, like to reach that moment where you feel that this is your breakthrough.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask about those 2 years. Were you sort of like a freelancer that was called by project, or was that a full-time job?
So I was lucky. I got a full-time job so in those days, you either had production companies or post-production companies. The company I worked for was a mixture of the two. It was a post-production production company. And James, although he worked for CNN at the time, was paid on an ad hoc freelance basis, because obviously there aren't bad stories every day. But he was the official cameraman for Africa, and eventually he left and went full time with CNN. I think it was, if I recall correctly, it was after Nelson Mandela was released from Victor Verster prison.
I see. Awesome. Okay, so after that breakthrough moment, what happened after that? Like, how did things progress?
So, the progress is always a slow road. And I mean, my first ambition was to shoot. That was the first ambition, was to film as many things as possible and work with as many directors as possible. And quite often in those days, you wouldn't necessarily always have a director. You'd have a producer who directed. And a lot of the material I shot was mainly inserts, like short stories, 5-minute stories, mini documentaries, sometimes corporate films. I never really got into the commercial business at that stage, because our company wasn't in that line of business. But it was a wonderful experience. I mean, we did films in Kenya, in Namibia, in Paris, all over the world. So, I got to shoot amazing things. And in that time, you become familiar with shooting and exposing and framing and telling a story with the camera. Something that I still treasure and actually miss. I mean, being a camera guy in those days, you carried a lot of responsibility. But when I handed you the tapes at the end of the day, my job was done.
Yeah.
Which I found out later on in my new career that that's not the case.
How's that was not the case?
Well, when you start directing, you have this long pre-production period, as you know. I mean, you're a good director. I've looked at your reel.
Thank you.
And I have to say, we've seen a lot of people come through Boomtown presenting reels. And you were one of the people, as I met you, I remember, gee, this guy, his work was great. That was the instant thought I had.
Appreciate your words.
So, I'm telling you something you understand well, is that directors need a period of pre-production, planning, location recce's, treatments, casting, and let's say that formulates 7/10 of the job. The shoot is really only 1/10 of the job, and the next 2/10 is post-production. So it's a very lengthy process. So the liberation of being a DOP at the time was great, because you get paid quicker.
Yeah.
Your job is shorter, and that's not your responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, were DPs at that time, were they also involved in the coloring process?
No.
Today?
No, not like today. We would send off for film. You'd send it off, and the development house would send you a one light, which would be just their guess at what it should look like. Whether it was 50 daylight or 250 daylight or tungsten. I think they had a standard setting. And then once you had cut it, then the editors were really involved with the director in the grading process.
I see.
But not the DPs.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was something that did not cross my mind before. But as you were talking right now, and just talking about the 7/10 and just like what remains, it just crossed my mind. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, pleasure. I mean, editors, the discipline of editing on film is completely different to video. I mean, video is an absolute pleasure. I mean, when tape to tape was hard, but I think the digital world has opened up for filmmakers tremendous opportunities to be far more creative and to achieve what took us a decade or two ago, half the time, quarter of the time, to achieve the same result.
But there's also more competition, I would say, like at the moment, because that accessibility opened doors for more people to feel like they can be part of the industry. While in the past, a lot of, like, I would say people thought it might be a very technical and a difficult process. Yeah. So it, in a way, could have turned people away from getting involved in the industry. Would you say that is the case?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that anybody and everybody has a phone in today's technology. We can all film. We can all take photographs. And many young guys just hop into the role of a cameraman or, they call themselves a DP very quickly. And they're not really a DP. A director of photography isn't just about shooting an image. Director of photography is about coverage, about giving the film a look and a feel, and there's so much more. Technology has allowed a relatively unskilled person to point at something and the picture looks good because the camera sees it as good. But it's, as a director, that one light or certain kind of framing or certain position of the camera marks the difference between the great eyes and the average eyes. And I think the process, sadly, today is too quick. And I'll use my son as an example. I mean, both my sons grew up in a film culture, and my eldest son is a producer in Australia doing animation feature films, and he's doing really, really well. He's released his first 3 features. My son, who's here in Dubai, Matthew, is a DP. I would say he's just progressed to a DP. But I had him work in the camera department as a first AC for, I think he did 6 or 7 years. He wanted to get behind the camera, but I said to him, Matthew, learn the craft of every single camera. Know how every single camera works. Know how lenses work. Watch the best people do what they do and learn from them. Like we're in a studio here. If he had been a first AC, he would see how the lights have been put up. If he went into a bright beach, he'd see how the DOP scrimmed it, where he placed his reflectors. So if you put yourself in a situation 100 times, 200 times, and you then eventually are the responsible person for capturing that image, you've been there, you've seen somebody else do it. And film is a fairly formulaic process in a way. You have a key light, which you've got a key light on you. There's a backlight behind you. In this instance, in this studio, we haven't got a fill. But generally, that's how film works. So you learn these things. And by putting yourself in those positions on a regular basis, I think you become ready to progress to the next level. And I think it's a pity that people speed up the process. And I can understand why, because let's say a focus puller earns $1 and a camera guy earns $3 and a DOP earns $5. So we're trying to fast track our financial compensation. Whereas if you really invest in your career and step through the processes, I think that you'll end up at the end of your road far better than you would have if you fast-tracked your start.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. I mean, being set up in a, family or a household that could possibly fast-track your career, you chose to, make sure that he's going through, the entire process so he can get that experience that when he's called to be called a DP for that first time or getting that responsibility for that first project, he'd be, he'd have that experience that would make him capable enough to take it on.
Absolutely. And the confidence, and I think that's so important. I really do. So, Jono, who brought us here, told the same thing. You want to be really good at what you do because, you mentioned there's a lot of competition. Yes, there's a lot of competition. How do you raise above the competition? How do you climb this ladder? How do you get to where you want to be? Not everyone has to be a director. Not everyone has to be a producer. I mean, in the UK industry, if you go and shoot there, you'll work with a focus puller who's 50 years old, 55 years old. But I'll tell you what, the focus is perfect because he's specialized in that area his whole life. So, for your audience, I really believe that do what you love doing. If you enjoy, decorating, go into the art department and become the best art director that you can. If you're good at finance, go into accounts. I mean, on a feature film, financial management's a massive thing. If you're interested in hair, there's a hair and makeup department. So, the film industry is a wide area of careers, but, everybody just wants to be a director. And not everybody can be a director. And the road to being a director, as you know, is a very hard journey. You make many, many sacrifices. And, maybe I'm worried I'm talking too much, but, I may consider something good, and you may not consider it good. And as a director, and being in the film industry, I think particularly in the role of being a director, you have to understand that you're going to have a lot of people criticize you, a lot of people who think what you do is not great. And it's hard. It's hard doing stuff that, you've put your heart into and people look at and they don't like it. And if you let those negative comments affect you inside, you're not going to progress. And the road of progression, as I said just now, is about perseverance, about vision, about overcoming obstacles. It's almost like if you wrote a script for film and, you have your protagonist who starts somewhere and at the end he's the hero and he's won the battle. But along that way, he has challenges and he has to overcome all those challenges in his story arc to end up the hero, the American formula of making film. And it's just like our lives. You're going to have all these stumbling blocks that you've got to overcome. And in the career of any filmmaker, it's going to be hard.
Mm-hmm. You said a lot of things, and I feel like I want to touch on some of these points, but I'll start with the way that you instructed Matthew again. There's another school that says, possibly next to doing that, make sure that you do your own projects so that you would build a portfolio. So next to gaining that practical experience, you'd actually have something to show for that time when you get your very first project. You wouldn't say that I don't have a portfolio yet, but I just have that experience.
Yes.
What would you say about the balance between this and that?
I mean, the people who are really committed to their craft, invest in their craft. So, if you want to be a young director, you've got to beg, borrow, steal from people and find people who believe in you, and you need to make your passion projects. And hopefully those passion projects are good enough to stimulate interest for, a production house to say, that's a talent, I want to bring them into our production company. In an industry like South Africa, let's say, and I think South Africa is no different to other countries around the world. And, we're using Matthew as an example. He became well known in the film industry for being really good at what he is doing. So his progression wasn't as hard because people trusted him. And, I think the thing that we haven't touched upon as well is the whole industry is about relationships. It's if you and I get on well and I like you, I will give you an opportunity if I believe in you. And you don't necessarily have to have done the specific job that I'm looking for, but I can see you have the talent, then I'll invest in you. And I think Matthew was lucky that, people believed in him and gave him opportunities at the right time, but they knew he was ready. So a reel is an important tool, of course. And, I've been boxed in my career with a reel, and I couldn't get out the box, and I had to really make big changes to step into the next stage.
We're definitely going to have to get to that then. Okay, so let's just to summarize this point. Just trust is very important, relationship is very important, experience is important, and having a reel is important. So if in a competitive field nowadays, if you want to stand out and for people to actually give you that chance and invest in you and give you your first opportunity, just try to make sure that you're balancing between all of those altogether, and this will open up the path for you.
I believe so. And I mean, here in Dubai, I'm not quite sure why it doesn't work like this, and I'm not sure how it works in Egypt, but in the UK, in the States and South Africa, you need a good agent. And your agent should push you and help you get opportunities.
Even in smaller roles?
Even in smaller roles. So there's a crew agency called Nautilus Crew in Cape Town, and Caller Crew and many others. And, as a production company, I would phone them and I would say, listen, because the crew are busy, I'd say, I need a full crew, DOP, focus puller, blah, 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 blah. The whole crew list. And then they would send me, in those days, it was a fact sheet of, all the crew that were available. You look at pencil 1, pencil 2, he's totally available, she's not. And you start picking your crew, and you tell them, you'd like X person, X person, X person. But sometimes the person you want is not available. And that's where a good agent would say to the producer, I have this young guy who I believe can step up into this. And because you trust the agent, you give the person a shot. And that can be the start of a person's career. We're all given an opportunity somewhere in our career.
Yes, that's true.
And we all need help. It's not a magic wand of ka-chink. And it's not necessarily always a reel that gets you the open door. There's so many people who are great filmmakers who don't make it. And they've got far better reels than I've ever had. But it's the positioning. It's about who you know. It's about how hard you work towards opening, doors. Or did you not get somebody who believed in you, who helped you? So
you just touched on my worst fear, But let's hope you find that path till you make it, and you keep on persevering, as you said, till you make something like that happen. So I want to get back to you were talking about the transition into a cameraman, and you didn't tell us so far how did you transition from that to becoming a director. We want to learn about that process, and we want to learn about your first project as a director.
Sure. Okay. I'll try and compress it if I can. Transitioning from camera I transitioned from camera to producer. That was my first step.
Interesting.
And it was out of necessity. The company that I worked with went under. This is the company that I was a camera guy for. And I had a really good relationship with a lot of the clients. And the clients approached me and said to me, Bruce, we'd like to give you our work as a producer. I said that I've never produced before. Anyway, I got a whole pile of business, like amazing. I had Bacardi Breezer. I had a fitment center. I had a credit card business, all just like that. And I learned producing literally overnight. So I didn't do coordinator, production manager, producer, but I was intelligent enough to hire the right people. And I was also wise enough to hire people that knew much, much more than me. And I didn't pretend to them that I knew more than them. I told them, listen, I've landed this thing. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Help me. And it was amazing just by sort of being straight, humble, and open with people. They gave you their energy and they were prepared to help. And then, thank you goes a long way. And paying people on time and quickly also goes a long way. So, I looked after the people who looked after me. And, out of necessity, I produced. And in that period of producing, boy, oh boy, I worked with some bad directors. And I watched these guys and girls and thought, gee, I can do a much better job than these guys. And I wasn't being arrogant in my approach. It was just, I really felt that they didn't have the passion. They didn't have the eye. They never told a story. And it was very frustrating working with a lot of these people. And then you'd go into post-production, and as the producer, you've got to see the project right through to the end. The directors would do their shoot. They'd do a director's cut of the offline, and then bye-bye, off they go. And the post-production process is that of the producer. So I had to fix many, many, many bad jobs that other people did. And in my heart of hearts, I wanted to tell stories. And I looked at the industry, and the industry was very competitive, even in those days, like super competitive. There are directors today who I was going to compete against, Kim Geldenhuys being one of them. Keith Rose is in the Clio Hall of Fame amongst some of the best directors in the whole planet. South Africa, I think similar to Egypt, is a highly creative industry of excellence. And our advertising would win at Cannes every year. We were one of the top. I mean, Hunt Lascaris started in Cape Town. Ogilvy Mather is a Cape Town agency, and they became global agencies. So it shows you the creative that came out of South Africa and Cape Town. So I realized to be a director, and this is maybe a good thing for your audience, I identified a niche in the directing market.
Uh-huh.
People hate directing children and animals. And I thought, to get into this business, I'm going to have to undertake a role where there's less competition and try and make that my own. And I had children, so I started filming my own kids, and I started cutting little musical pieces together. And I got amazing performances out of my own children, but it wasn't really performances. It was just shooting them in their natural habitat, doing their things. But I cut it to a great piece of music, and it stimulated interest. And we picked up a retail account. Retail advertising is like price and product. But this client wanted a story up front, price and product, and a very warm ending. And I ended up doing about 150 children's commercials with them. So I learned how to work with kids. And, from there progressed into an international children's director. I've shot in Beirut. I used to come to Dubai. I was one of the directors for Nestle Africa. So I did a lot of commercials as a children's director.
That's very interesting for me personally, because it was not something that I planned, but one of my, I would say, the biggest client that I worked with so far on so many different projects is UNICEF.
Yeah.
So it just put me in a place where I was directing children so many times. And then even when I work with different clients, and it wasn't until I think a couple of years ago that I realized that even when I was not directing work with UNICEF, one way or the other, I had children in my project. So I did one with IKEA and I still had children in it. So it was just by chance. But I had no idea that you can actually become an international children's director.
Yeah, people are scared of working with children, and companies like Unilever, Nestle do specific commercials with children. Obviously, there's a mother and a father in it, but the children create the empathy for the product, and the mother's the consumer really. So if you appeal to a mother on screen to buy this peanut butter, and there's a cute kid, you build the brand, and she goes and buys that brand that she saw the ad on. So advertising does work in that way. So yeah, I mean, and to move forward from there, I got really tired of doing children's commercials. It's very humbling. In fact, you can arrive at set and you can think, I'm this big fancy director, and a 3-year-old can humble you.
Yeah.
Just like that. So attitude, not something you should have. Pride, throw it out the window. Know that if you get your casting wrong, that's it. You're going to have a bad day, no matter what. And I just got to the point where I felt I had done my journey with commercials, and I wasn't sure how to move forward. And people wouldn't buy me as a narrative director. They wouldn't buy me to do a car commercial because I was put in this box. So it was very frustrating when you think you can offer more, but nobody else can see that in you.
I see. So that's the part where you're saying that you were boxed into something and you had to do something else.
Had to do something radical. And I think that's where the journey gets interesting.
Can you tell me the span, like the time that you actually spent being sort of like specialized in directing children?
So that was from 2002 to 2012, 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So
long
a long time, yeah. A lot of commercials, a lot of bad commercials, some really great commercials. But, it's it's fairly forgiving business at the time. I would know how to move your eye line. I would know how to make a kid smile. I would know how to, I just knew, and that's not something that you can learn. It's through experience. And, quite often people would cast a child. You go to a casting and this one smiles and he's bouncy and you think, gee, that's a great kid. My strategy wasn't that. I would quite often choose the children who were a little bit quieter, but who listened. And what that gave you was a consistency of performance for the day. So you didn't have these spikes throughout your film, and they may come across shy, but they're very endearing when they smile. So it was a strategy that I had in my overall casting of children, and it was successful at the time.
That's it. Very, very interesting. So tell us more. What did you do to just get out of that box?
It was a very tough decision because you're earning good money. In those days, it was between $5,000 and $8,000 a day as a director. When I converted that over into our rand value, one day would cover 2 months' living, and I was doing a lot more than one day. So it's very hard to get out of earning well to perhaps earning nothing. So you have to be really committed to what you want to do. And I watched a film with my wife, and I wish I could remember the name of the film now. I think it's these grey hairs that I'm getting. And I knew I could do it better. I just knew I could do it better. And I'd read in a book that if you do what you love, you will do it well. And I thought, if I'm going to make a film, I love surfing, I love the ocean, I love water, and I also have a strong faith as well. And I wanted to combine those two elements into a project. So but how do you start? What do you do? And I recall this story, and I mean, it's amazing. When you sleep at night and you have something on your mind, sometimes something drops into your head. And I remember a guy talking, and they knew him as the jellyfish man. And his journey was, he set off to seek a perfect wave. And on his journey, his life changed tremendously. And I just remember that element of it. And I thought, I've got to find this guy. And I hopped on the internet and I started searching. And eventually I found him on the internet. And I said to him, I'm a filmmaker in South Africa. Could I tell you a story? And he said, yes. And I was like, Jeepers Creepers, what do I do from here? I had no experience, no knowledge. And I just did a lot of research on him at that point. And then I thought the best way to start is get a writer. And I found a great writer. And he wrote the script. And, excuse me, it was fabulous. It read well. And I felt like I've got something here. I've really got something here. It's based on a true story. It's got surfing. I've got an identified market being, let's say, a faith-based market and surfers. So you had a film that could immediately have an audience. And it took me a year and a bit to do this. I earned no money. By faith I walked.
So no money for that entire year? You were not doing anything on the side just to...
I didn't. I focused on what I wanted to achieve. And, when we got to the point of a finished script, I thought, gee, the money's just going to fall out of the sky and I'm going to make this film, But anyway, then started the process of raising money. And raising money...
Not to interrupt you, but when finding that writer, did you pay them or was that just a collaborative process?
I paid, but I couldn't pay the full amount. So I asked him to work on a deferment basis. So paid a percentage of his fee. And then once we got the money for the film raised, we would pay him the shortfall. He believed in the project and he wanted to do the project. So it kind of worked out well for both of us in the end. He earned well. I got a great film. So we all won.
So yeah, you're talking about the process of raising the money.
Oh, raising money is the most dreadful thing you can ever imagine.
Tell me about it.
So as a creative person who wears his cap backwards, you've got to put it on front. In fact, take it off and be able to sell an idea. It's not like you're selling a painting or a building. You're selling a script on a piece of paper that is unmade and you're an unknown capacity. And why would anybody give you money to make something that they could not measure? And, there wasn't grants available. The government didn't give money. So I had to find private equity to raise to do this film. And it was one of the most difficult years of my life, actually, because
that was 2014.
Sorry,
that was 2014.
2013.
13. Oh.
It was so depressing. People say, "Yes, I love your project," and they give you what I call a slow no. So the intention is no from the beginning, and they lead you on, and then it's an eventual no. And you have all these highs and lows. People give you hope, they let you down. People give you hope, they let you down. And many times throughout that year, I questioned whether I was doing the right thing or not. And I realized I wasn't going to succeed with the current palette that I had at the time. So I reached out to friends of friends of friends, and they helped. And I managed to secure Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son, to play the lead role. So suddenly the script had credibility. Suddenly it became measurable for investors. And the money just flowed.
So how did you manage to make that happen? Because that's not like an easy name to come across. Was that through, as you were saying, the relationships?
It was through friends of friends of friends. And, our common love with each other, myself and Scott, was surfing. So he was a big surfer. He loved surfing. And I just had to get the script in front of him for him to read and to buy into. And he committed without his agents. He committed to the project. And I had his signature, and I had his buy-in. And look, it didn't take a week, but it took 3.5 months from then. But the money came. And,
Eventually that come from...
all private equity.
I see.
All people who believed in the project, the message of the project, all loved surfing. It was a real eclectic mix of investors. And that was probably the hardest part of my whole career was doing. And these are all new things. I was a cameraman. I hopped into producing. I didn't know what I was doing. I then hopped into directing. I learned how to direct children. And then I put another hat on as a financier raising money. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it was $2.5 million. And that in today's terms would probably be $10 or $12 million.
Yeah.
So you're talking big numbers that you're raising from nothing. Yeah. And
that was just you spearheading everything during that time. You had no one else on your team trying to help you get that funding?
I had my business partner and obviously friends and support, but I had to largely do it. I think that people buy your passion and they believe in you. And when you get people to believe in you and they see that you are sincere, that you really want to make this, I think people feel empathy and also they buy in. And I was very, very passionate about it. And I also met an American producer. His name was Brian Hickox. He's in his late 70s now, maybe even early 80s. And he won 13 Emmy Awards. So he was a big name in the States. And I told him the story, and he came aboard as the producer. So now I knew I had an international producer. I had Scott Eastwood. And Brian said to me, "You've got to get a strong leading lady." And we threw the net out there, and it's difficult to find an actress who is sort of, let's say, early 50s, maybe late 50s max. And, most of the people who read it were, I would have loved to have worked with them, but they didn't like the script for some reason, or they didn't relate to the project. And eventually Cheryl Ladd, who was one of the original Charlie's Angels, and I'm sure your audience will look her up. She was the most beautiful woman you can imagine, or she is. And not only from the outside, but from inside. Really an amazing human being. She just fell for the project. And I got her, and I was so nervous of working with her. I'd never directed a feature film. I had Scott Eastwood coming. I had a girl, Rachel Hendricks, who had won numerous awards in America for a film of hers called October Baby. And I was starting a journey, and I was in deep.
That is amazing. And if it says anything, it says that you can be established in a specific area, but if you want to get out of your comfort zone, if you want to do that next big project, then you're not going to act as that big shot because you were a big shot in a specific area, but you just need to hustle till you break out of the box, as you just said, and take that leap into another direction that is going to shed that spotlight on you.
And you also have to be prepared to sacrifice. To move forward doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to gain. There might be a period of, for me it was a sacrifice. We almost lost our house at the time. It was, for my family it was tough. And I was stressed often. But I believed we could do it. But I want to tell you a little story.
Sure.
Before we did the film, I thought about how do I deal with Scott? How do I deal with Cheryl? How do I deal with Diana Vickers, who had won X Factor in the United States? How do I deal with Rachel? How do I create a team? How do I create an environment where they trust me? Because I had nothing to go on. I had a children's reel of commercials. And there wasn't anything like super cinematic. There wasn't anything super narrative. There wasn't anything really for me to be able to do this that could say I could do the job. And I thought the best way to do this is to get everybody on my side. And I looked deep into myself and I thought, I'd met a great leader, Nelson Mandela. I'd been in his presence. I took a crew. We did a shoot with him. And most of the crew were anti him because there was an apartheid issue in South Africa. And at the end of our shoot, Nelson Mandela said to me, Bruce, I'd like you to introduce all your crew to me. And here was this iconic leader of the time. I mean, he has to be one of the iconic leaders of our time, maybe of the decade of the 19th century. Here was this great leader who took 45 seconds to say, how are you? Do you have children? Are you married? You know, did you enjoy your time with me at the presidency? It was such a humbling experience. And so what I took out of that was a great leader is a great servant. And here was our president of our country serving unknown nobodies.
Wow, that's such an inspiring story, and I did not see it coming. So, I mean, thank you for sharing that.
So I took that experience into the perfect wave, into this film. And I called my first AD and I said to him, I'm going to ask you to do something that you've never done before. I'm going to book a whole restaurant up. We're going to shut the restaurant down. You and I are going to be the waiters. We're going to serve. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the two young boys, the children, together. And that was Scott Eastwood and the actor Jack Halloran. And we're going to serve them. Then we're going to introduce them to their parents, Cheryl Ladd and another great actor in South Africa, Paddy Lister. And from there, we're going to bring in the brother and we're going to expand the table. And it was incredible. Scott and Jack arrived. And there I was with a bow tie, a white shirt and a tux on. And I said, good evening, sir. Can I show you to your table? He thought I was joking. He really thought I was joking. I said, no, Scott, I'm here to serve you. And we placed them at the table. We brought Cheryl in. We brought all the people. The people were very embarrassed that their director was their waiter for the evening. And it was the most amazing experience. It was an amazing breakthrough because I needed all the help I could get to make this film. And the only way I could make it is by getting you to trust me and for you to know that I would do whatever it took to help you achieve your best thing. And that was the moment. The film was made on that one evening.
Oh, that's in today's world and people just trying to find different ways to get people on board and believe in them. That is a very interesting method that you did there. And I love the inspiration behind it from, like the interview that you did with Nelson Mandela and how all of that came together to teach you and do something like that. And I possibly might find myself stealing it someday. But yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that. So can you tell me about the process from since you decided that you wanted to make the film till you finalized the cut and it actually went to screen? How long did that take?
Sure. It took just over a year.
Okay.
From the moment we had the money till completion.
Okay, but I'm talking now, so like from the moment that you decided that you wanted to make the film and found the writer.
2.5 years. So it was quick.
Okay.
By film standards, it was super quick.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. But it's amazing that when you get good energy, you attract good things.
Yes.
So I got a top music house in America called the Tree House. And the guy who did the music worked with John Williams, one of the most famous composers in the world. His name was Jeremy Soule. And I went to go and I'm fast tracking the film. I mean, we've got a lock cut now. I go over to the States. I'm working with Jeremy, and we're looking for an opening soundtrack, something that resonated, something that created a sense of emotion at the time. We're sitting in the suite, and the Jonah brothers were recording a track in the room next door, and then I heard this guy singing, and I thought that's the track. It has to be the track. And Jeremy said to me, okay, I'll bring the guy in and show him the front of the movie. And the title of the song, it's not just about love. And it's the most beautiful soundtrack. And the guy came in and he looked at the front and he said, yeah, he likes it very much, but he'd like to get his boss to approve that this is the way to go. Guess what? He was the chef of Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, wow.
And he was a singer. That's what his passion was a singer, and he worked for Leo.
Wow.
And I acquired this incredible soundtrack from him. And yeah, it was just a myriad of different experiences, meeting extraordinary people that ended up in a great project. And I'm super proud of it. The end result. And I'm not only proud about the film, I'm proud about the process of the film. I'm proud of the relationships that were formed within that film. I'm proud of the people who started nowhere and became greats from there. One of the guys was a guy called Scott Mortensen, the most incredible human being. He paddled around the Antarctic in a rowboat. We're talking extraordinary people that came together to make this film, and these friendships have endured. We're in 2024, 10 years later.
Wow, such an inspiring story. And as you said, like, I love how you said how the process was sort of like the treasure of making this movie more than the movie itself.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's what you learn. And when you look back at it, you have, yes, an incredible final output that you can share and show to people, but also just everything that you went through in that process as well. It just means a lot. And especially when you look back at it, maybe at the heat of the moment, you're feeling that you were too pressured, you're feeling that a lot of things were not going your way, but when you look back at it, this is when you really appreciate it.
I'm going to tell you the most surreal story now.
Mm-hmm.
The other project that I was birthing at the same time is a project called Jet Jungle. South Africa, we grew up, and only in 1976 did television start. So we were very late bloomers in the world of film, TV. So I grew up as a young boy listening to radio. And I think that was part of the creative process, is because you heard these things and you had to visualize them. And we learned a skill of visualizing based on words. And Jet Jungle made a huge impression upon me as a child. And I thought, if ever I make a film, I'd like to make a film on Jet Jungle. So I acquired the rights for this property. It's a big project, but I needed serious money to take this further. And one of the richest groups in South Africa is the Rupert Group. They own Mont Blanc, Cartier, British American Tobacco. I think he's the 150th richest man in the world. Anyway, I managed to pitch them this project. They bought it. And they gave me seed money of, I think it was about $750,000 to go and develop a script, to get an international partner aboard, and develop the IP to the point where the film could be made. And having the Rupert Group behind us financially opened doors. They're a big, powerful group of people. So if I phoned you in America and I said, listen, I've got this project, I'd like to show it to you, most producers in America just say, no, we haven't got the time, because everybody's got a script and everybody's got an idea. So I would phone and I'd say, I'm phoning from the Rupert Group in South Africa, part of British American Tobacco. They're supporting a project that I'm doing, and I'd like to see if you'd like to partner us. Door open. So I walked in and I met some of the biggest filmmakers in the United States. Anyway, several of them were interested in the project and partnering us on the project. At that stage, we didn't have a script. Came back to South Africa, and this is where the story gets interesting. And Invictus, the movie, was filming in Cape Town, and it was with Matt Damon. Clint Eastwood was directing, and Morgan Freeman was Nelson Mandela, the lead actor. Anyway, so I get a call, and it's Ian Banner, one of Johan Rupert's key employees. And he said to me, Bruce, I need you to go and pitch our story to Morgan Freeman. I said to him, you've got to be kidding. I'm going to go and pitch my story to the best actor in the world. Not a chance. He said, you have to do it. So anyway, I drive to where the set is, and there's this big caravan, and there are these stairs up to the caravan. I'm kind of sweating. I'm very, very nervous. And I walk in, and there are 15 people, no Morgan Freeman. And they say to me, listen, sit down here. And his business partner, Laurie McCreary, was in there, a really, really wonderful person. She was the head of the Producers Association of America. So I'm telling you, she's a very powerful lady. You don't get much higher than that in the States. And I start sharing the film idea with them, and I bumble through it. And I've got this amazing presentation that I'm going through. And in walks this shadow through the door, this tall man who has this immense presence. It's Morgan Freeman. He comes and he sits right next to me, and I'm showing these pictures, and he looks at the pictures and he says, I don't like anthropomorphic animals. I don't know what anthropomorphic means, so I carry on. Anyway, the presentation goes fairly well, and I leave. And the first thing I found, and I say to my wife, I've met Morgan Freeman, Wow. She says, how'd it go? I said, I've absolutely no idea. The next night, I get a call from Laurie saying they would like me to join them for dinner. This is with Morgan and Laurie. I go and have a dinner. This is at the one and only restaurant. Who's that famous chef? Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay, yes. So it's his restaurant. It's super upmarket. Only rich people are there. I'm in my Sunday best. And anyway, we get chatting, and Morgan writes on a serviette, we're in business, passes it over to us. So started the most interesting journey you can ever imagine.
I can't believe that story. Like, as you're saying, I just can't believe it, because how did you feel when he actually signed?
Terrified, excited, elated, crazy. Best actor in the whole world, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it got better. So we signed an agreement between his company, Revelations Entertainment, and the company we set up for it was Bogosi Films. And, to do a film, you set up a special purpose vehicle company so that all funding goes through that company, and it's very transparent, and it's how films are made. So if I had my own private production company and I'm doing 8 jobs and I put a film through it, your books aren't clean. So you run these things through what's called an SPV. Anyway, we set up this SPV with them, and we then had to write the script. And we felt the first way to start the script was to travel to where we were setting the film. And I'm not going to give too much away about the film, but the narrative of the film is animals migrate 3,000 kilometers for one thing, water. Imagine if the water wasn't there. So that's the overarching logline of the film. So Morgan's flying to release Invictus in South Africa in his private jet, and it's quite funny. He's got one wonky hand, and his pilot, Jim, he's got another wonky hand. So you've got the two of them flying a plane, and both of them are damaged. How they fly the plane, I don't know. Anyway, so they're flying to South Africa in their private jet, and he does the release of the film, and obviously he does a private screening with Nelson Mandela because he wants to show Nelson Mandela how he portrayed him. And we were lucky enough to get a glimpse of Laurie's camera of Nelson watching his own movie. They filmed him. A highly emotive moment. I don't think many people have seen that little clip of video. I would put myself as one of a few. Anyway, so he's flown here, and Johan Rupert says to me, tell me if I'm being boring.
Oh, no, not at all.
He says to me, I'm going to loan you my private jet. I've never been in a private jet before, by the way. And so I fly with Morgan Freeman. Our two jets arrive in Botswana. I feel like quite a rich dude at this stage. We park our jets into their hangars, and we then climb into this tiny little aeroplane with a guy with short pants and long socks with a bush hat on. Crazy pilot, small plane, and he flies like you won't believe. And we land in the middle of nowhere in Botswana, and we met by a guy called Mike Holding. He was the cinema photographer for BBC's Animal Planet, the most incredible cinema photographer. Worked with David Attenborough. Anyway, he's got a film camp on Chiefs Island where we went to camp for 2 weeks. Myself, two guys from the investment company, Laurie McCreary, Morgan Freeman, and that was about it. So you got to spend this intense time of 2 weeks. And basically what we spent in that time was developing story. But this is not where it ends. We hired two writers from America to fly in so they could get the feel of the Okavango. These two guys thought perhaps we were mafia. And, they were terrified of coming to Africa. They didn't know us. Anyway, they ended up writing the most brilliant script you could imagine. And 8 years later, 2024. We're talking 11 years later. We've just finished the script 2 weeks ago. Wow. 2 weeks ago. This is with one of the most powerful actors in the world, one of the most powerful producers in the world, and we've just finished the script. Something that I believe we're all happy with. So the process is about to begin, where we're now going to start attaching actors. Morgan's attached himself to the film as the caretaker of Africa. That's the only hint I can give you. And we're going to shoot this in the Okavango Delta in South Africa, or in Botswana, which is a neighboring country of South Africa.
Wow. Did you share all this intel before?
No.
Or that's an exclusive?
You've got something that...
Oh, wow. I can't believe myself. That's amazing. No. Well, I mean...
So it's a best-kept secret, and that's why I can't divulge more about the project.
I mean, I get it. But yeah, that's super exciting. I hope I'm invited to the premiere just so I can get to meet Morgan.
You know what? He is such an amazing human being. I can't say I know him super well. Yes, we did spend some time together. And yes, he is a private person. But he's one of the most educated people you can ever imagine. he knows a lot about everything, and he has such presence, and but he surrounded himself with amazing people. His company, Revelations Entertainment, kind of headed up by Laurie. Amazing people, an amazing support structure, people who believe in him. And, I think acting's quite a lonely thing. You're putting yourself out there all the time, and even the best feel insecure at times. And he's just such a humble, good man, and it's an honor to have met him. And I pray that everything falls in place and allows us to make that film.
I hope so too, and I can't wait to see it myself. So in all of that process, because you're talking about 11 years, can you tell me more just sort of about financially, how have you been navigating this time? And this is what I mean to say that you've been sort of like back and forth between doing films, the commercial industry, just to, find that balance and, being able to provide, but also doing what you love.
So I've been very lucky. I mean, I co-own a company in South Africa called Boomtown. And I have to say my business partner there, Craig Jones, has been an absolute pillar of strength. I've taken him along a journey, yes, along the dream, but he's been our bread and butter. He's done the service commercials and the hard yards, and we've split the money 50-50 up till 2 years ago. So I've managed to perpetually earn without working all the time because we've got a successful company. So that allowed one to dream and grow your dreams without financial pressure. And I think financial pressure sometimes makes you, or is part of the reason of making a bad decision at times, because you have to make it out of necessity.
That's such an accurate statement.
So I was lucky.
I see. And on going between, like films and also doing some commercials, can you tell us more about that? Because some people believe if you're a commercial director, you can do films. If you're a film director, you can do commercials. So what do you say about that?
I think some of the best directors in the world are doing commercials. We just spoke to Neil Blomkamp, who made District 9 a few days ago. He's a fellow South African. He's an incredible filmmaker. And I got hold of him through a friend of mine, so I got direct contact with him. And we put him up for a commercial, and he really wanted to do the commercial. Ridley Scott has done huge commercials. So, a lot of brands want to associate with very successful people. Guy Ritchie has done big things on commercials. It's sometimes easier to go from a features director down to commercials than it is to go from commercials to a feature. It's a very big jump from commercials to features, because you don't, as a commercials director, you have many narratives, short narratives. You don't have a long narrative. You also don't shoot for 42 days. You need huge endurance to be able to shoot for 42 days. It's not like a 5-day commercial. And sometimes a 5-day commercial, you can have a budget of $1 million. Sometimes you'll make a whole film for $2.5 million. Totally different discipline, different way of working. You can't do 65 takes. You've got to work with the actors again and again and again, day after day. You need to build relationships. So I think from commercials to features, in my opinion, is a big jump. A harder jump than the other way around.
I see. So if you're a film director into commercials, it's slightly easier for you to make that transition.
No, I think it's easier for you to be a features director and direct commercials. Yeah, other than to be a commercials director and get into features, I think it's quite tough.
Yeah, I get it. I see. Okay, so I would say my next question is, you were talking to me when we previously met that at some point you felt like you're a little bit burnt out from doing commercial projects, and you took some sort of like break and went into doing these short format projects that were humanitarian projects at that point. Can you talk to me more about that area and that phase?
Yes. It was birthed out of a movie that I did called Samson. Probably one of the most challenging projects I've ever done. It was feature film, and I wouldn't say it was the happiest time of my life doing it. I was very committed to the story, but I was a lonesome director with 15 executive producers and just too many people controlling things that they shouldn't have controlled. And the eventual outcome of the film didn't make me happy as a director. And I turned down the opportunity to do the pickups, and somebody else did the pickups shots. I mean, quite often you'll shoot a film and then you'll see there's some story gaps, and you shoot the pickups to bridge those elements. I felt I was burnt out at that point, and I felt I didn't really have anything to offer, so I turned it down. And I found it a very painful process, that something that you gave a lot of passion to didn't turn out the way you felt it could have or should have. So it put me in a position, and I'm being very honest and truthful here. I was very hurt. And we lived on a mountain, and I would, in the evenings, just go and sit on a bench above the beach and look at the beach and reflect on life, really. And at that point, I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue being a filmmaker. And it was a hard time, a very reflective time. So,
how old were you?
It wasn't long ago. I mean, it was 2018, 6 years ago.
I see. So, like, these feelings are normal for people to feel, even, like if you're in your 40s, if you're 50s.
Yeah, we're human beings. I mean, I was very sore. It was a very painful process, and I needed to heal. I needed to find a place that I fell in love with film again. It wasn't a good time for me, and I believe so. I'm a spiritual man. I believe in God. I believe God opens doors for you and creates opportunities for you, and I believe there's a plan for each of our lives. And as long as we follow the right path, that the right opportunities would come. And I'm a passionate person. If I believe in you, I'll give you everything I've got. If there's a project, I'll give it all I've got, at the expense sometimes of your health, your well-being, and all sorts of things. You know what it's like. Anyway, so a good friend of mine phoned, and he said to me, there are these human trafficking short films that they would like to get me involved in. And he sent me an example of one, and I was like, oh my word. These are stunning. These are brilliant. And he sent me through the idea. There was no script. There was no structure to it. And, earlier on you said you'd like one to give a storyboard of a project that became a reality. I'll give you one of those for your audience, and I'll give you the finished film as well. So, you can put it out there if you want to. But it grabbed my attention and all my energy. And, it took me it's a very unhealthy thing to look inwards. When you look inwards too much, you become destructive to your own personal well-being. But when you look outwards, your whole world changes. And that project gave me the opportunity to look outwards again. And I looked at this and I fell in love with the idea. I fell in love with making a difference. There's so many people who are being abused in the world. There's so many people whose lives are being robbed, from them through human trafficking. They're becoming prostitutes, child beggars, given a false promise of a different life, and it's a lie. And I felt I related to that immediately, because I felt on on the film that I'd just done that I'd been betrayed. So it brought all these emotions to a place that gave me new hope and new energy. And we made these 2 films that were magnificent. I'm more proud of those films than I am of maybe anything else I've ever done. They were incredible, absolutely incredible. I worked with incredible people, with great visionaries, and they just gave me total control. I did exactly as I wanted. I had nobody say, don't do this or don't put that there. And I just had support. And it was liberating. It was a rebirth. And I ended up doing more. They flew me to the Dominican Republic. And one of the films that I did there was taken to the government in Mexico and stopped child begging. These were very powerful films.
You're speaking about some of the type of projects that I dream of doing more than others. So thank you for sharing, that experience with us. It's just, if I'm talking about the type of projects that I personally love to do, it's just these projects that would actually tell you a true tale that you don't know about, that you're not aware exists.
Yeah.
And you're able to show it to the world. So thank you for taking us through that. So I think we have time for just a couple of
I have no idea what the
quick
time
questions.
Oh my word.
Yeah, we're almost.
We've talked for so long.
Yeah, so we're almost done. So
I've talked too much.
Oh no! I mean, it was all incredible and was all informative. So I'll just ask 2 quick questions, and then we can wrap after that.
I can have a sip of my water then.
Of course. So about your relationship with Dubai and coming over here, can you tell us when that started, and what's your advice to filmmakers that are trying to make it over here?
Sure, I'll try and compress it. So I own Boomtown in South Africa, and there's Boomtown here in Dubai. Boomtown in Dubai, owned by Shane Martin, used to come to South Africa and shoot with us. We would service his commercials, and I learned a little bit about Arabic work, Arabic casting, how to make Arabic films, basically. And when I was this children's director, Shane actually was one of my clients that flew me over to Dubai, and I directed commercials for him. So we developed a friendship, and the 2 companies had a similar name, but we weren't one company. But there was always this relationship. And then after I finished the short films and COVID came, I kind of felt I wanted a change in my life. So we moved to Portugal. And Portugal's an amazing place, but there's no work. Anyways, but I enjoyed 6 or 8 months of doing absolutely nothing. And out of the blue, Shane phoned me and said to me, I'd love you to come to Dubai. Mm-hmm. And my company in South Africa was still going. It was doing well. So I was in a relatively comfortable position. I flew to Dubai. I hated it. It was like a concrete jungle, really. And, I'm used to beautiful fields, trees. The ocean is different. Everything's different. And I spent the first 2 months here. It was November, December. And my intention was never to come back in after December. But I wanted a commercial to do called a Crate and Barrel commercial for Crate and Barrel. Anyway, so I had to come back in January. And I came back and I did the commercial, and it turned out okay. It was a 1-day shoot, very stressful, too much to do in 1 day. But it kept me here for the period of January. And I started seeing opportunities here in Dubai. It's very similar to South Africa. Technically, they're amazing technicians, absolutely amazing technicians. The editors are superb, the camera people are superb, the grips are superb, the lighting technicians are superb. But there feels like there's a gap. And I said this yesterday at CapSat. and I picked up some flack for it. But I believe that the area is missing the talent of writers. And I'm not saying that there aren't good writers, but a lot of the material that's being created here is not traveling abroad. Although now, Saudi has films in Cannes that are releasing. So there's an evolution of the film industry taking place here. And it's not developed like Egypt, for instance. Egypt has a thriving features market, great directors, great writers, and, has a history of film. This area hasn't. And I think through restrictions of, you can't show a couple kissing, or you can't show this, or you can't show that, there was a lack of liberation in a way. But it's an ever-changing market here. So there's an opportunity for filmmakers here to try and create a project that can travel abroad. And I think I've got an idea now that will appeal to an international market, but it's a story that's based here. So that's really the focus now, is to develop that script, raise some finance to get a good writer. I don't know that I'll direct it. I think I'd like the story to be Emirati. I'd like it to be Arabic. So I need an Arabic director. Do you speak Arabic?
أهلا وسهلا. إيه الأخبار? I do, yes.
So who knows? Maybe we can develop this together. But I'm looking for somebody with your kind of talent, who I can walk a journey with, and add the producerial eye to a talent to make a film that is successful globally.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And my last question to wrap with, and this is what we wrap with in every episode. What does giving back mean to you?
I think giving back is probably one of the most important things in life. I think that we all, no matter whether a child in an industry, an adult in an industry, a grandfather in an industry, we can all give back something. We all have a little bit of knowledge that we can share. There's no single person in the world who knows everything. I learn every day. The moment you think you have nothing more to learn, I think you have a problem. But I think sometimes your experience is good to share with others. But to share it in a manner that is demeaning is not the right way to go. I've got young guys who work with me at Boomtown, and I'd go as far as saying they really look up to me. And they look up to me because I care for them. And I don't tell them what to do. I kind of just give them little prompts. I say to them, listen, why don't you try that? Or have you thought of this? Or maybe that might not work. And rather let them find the solutions, but lay the seeds that make them think. And I think that if you are collaborative in your impartation of sharing and not dogmatic, I think then you create an environment of mentorship. And funny enough, this film that you and I may talk about is about mentorship. Everybody needs a mentor. And I mean, just think of the movie Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off. It's an impartation. It's a mentorship of a young boy to become a champion. We all need to play a mentorship role. And I know I'm lingering on this, but I feel the role of men is being diluted in society. And, to play a father figure, a solid figure of fatherhood, with your children first, with your wife, with those close to you, and then those outside that circle, is what makes you a success. So to me, that's what giving back is all about.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Honestly, I booked the studio for 2 hours, but I feel like I should have booked it for about 10 because,
I'm embarrassed.
I feel like, I rushed you a little bit in these final few questions just because, we're about to get kicked out. But sincerely, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for joining us on Giving Back. And I honestly feel because there are so much more stories that possibly after the release of this episode, we might find ourselves doing another one where we share with our audience what we did not discuss in this episode. So
it's been a pleasure. And I mean, just for your audience, if they don't know, I mean, I've looked at your reel, I've looked at your work.
Thank you.
And, I think you guys need to know this is a seriously talented man.
Thank you so much.
And he's very humble in his approach. But, I wish you well.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
I think you have immense talent.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
And
it means a lot.
When I saw you, I thought, eek. He's asking me questions. I feel a little bit nervous. So, anyway, thank you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you so much for your words. They mean a lot. And again, thank you for giving back. And I hope this would be the start of many collaborations of you with Giving Back, because we definitely have a lot of more exciting things that we would love to do so we can help. Inshallah. Thank you so much, Bruce. And let's cut.